They say the ancestors speak through whispers. In the rustle of the wind, the creak of an old tree, the shiver that brushes your spine when you are alone. I should have listened to them. I should have heard their warnings the night I met him, the night everything changed. At first, he seemed perfect. The man of my dreams, with a smile as warm as the African sun. But dreams can turn into nightmares. And some men are not men at all. The ancestors tried to warn me. If I had listened, if I had trusted the whispers, I never would have stepped into that house. I never would have taken his hand. I never would have said yes. Some curses are born from blood. Some nightmares never end. Betha village, where the earth sang with the whispers of ancestors, was a sanctuary untouched by the chaos of modernity. Its people lived with the land, their lives guided by the rhythms of nature and the wisdom of those who came before. At the heart of this vibrant place was Mika, a young woman whose beauty and spirit made her a beacon of light. Mika's honey-colored eyes reflected the sunlit rivers she painted, and her coiled hair, often adorned with fresh flowers, framed her high cheekbones like a crown. Her skin, rich as polished mahogany, glowed under the African sun, and her presence carried a grace that turned heads wherever she walked. Yet, Mika was more than her beauty. She was an artist whose paintings captured the spirit of the land and the essence of her people. But Mika yearned for more. Her heart longed for adventure, for a love as vibrant and boundless as the world she dreamed of beyond Betha's hills. One afternoon by the river, as Mika painted the rolling hills bathed in golden light, she noticed a man watching her. He stood beneath the shade of an ancient baobab tree, his figure tall and commanding. His dark, smooth skin gleamed in the sunlight, and his amber eyes seemed to glow faintly as he stepped forward. "I hope I'm not intruding," he said, his voice deep and smooth, with an unplaceable accent. "Your work, it's incredible." Mika hesitated, her brush pausing mid-stroke. There was something magnetic about him, though a faint unease tickled the edges of her mind. "I'm Mika," she said cautiously, before adding, "and you are?" "Thabiso," the man replied, his smile disarming. "A traveler. An artist, like you." Thabiso spoke of far-off places he had seen, of vibrant cities and breathtaking landscapes. His words painted pictures of a world Mika had only dreamed of, a life full of possibilities. Despite the whispers of unease, Mika found herself captivated. Thabiso quickly endeared himself to the villagers. The elders admired his wisdom, the children adored his tales of distant lands, and Mika found herself falling for his charm. He seemed to understand her dreams in a way no one else had, encouraging her to imagine a life beyond the village. But Nomusa, Mika's mother, was less convinced. She watched Thabiso closely, her instincts sharp and her spirit unsettled. "Mika," Nomusa said one evening, her voice low, "there's something about him. His energy does not sit right with the land. Have you truly listened to your spirit when you're with him?" Mika hesitated. I feel something. But I don't know if it's fear or excitement." Nomusa leaned closer. "Fear is the ancestors' whisper. Unease is their warning. Trust it, my child. The ancestors send us signs, but only the wise listen." But Mika dismissed her mother's concerns, drawn deeper into Thabiso's world with each passing day. One evening, Thabiso invited Mika to meet him by the river. The air was warm, and the sky was alight with the glow of a full moon. Mika arrived to find Thabiso waiting, a soft smile on his lips. The river shimmered in the moonlight, and a canopy of stars stretched above them. "I wanted this moment to be perfect," Thabiso said, taking Mika's hands in his. You've shown me a beauty I thought I'd never find, not just in your art, but in your soul. You've brought me peace in a way I cannot explain. Mika's heart raced as Thabiso reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Inside was a ring, an antique gold band set with a sapphire so deep and vibrant it seemed to hold the light of the moon within it. "Mika," he said, his voice trembling with emotion, "you are my muse, my light, my destiny. Will you be my wife?" Overwhelmed, Mika's eyes filled with tears. She nodded, whispering, "Yes." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, a chill ran through her body, but she attributed it to the cool night air. She did not notice how the sapphire glowed faintly as it touched her skin. The village celebrated their engagement with song and dance, but no Musa sat in the shadows, her face lined with worry. That night, her dreams were filled with fire, horns, and shadows. She saw her daughter trapped in darkness, a pale devil standing over her, his blue eyes burning like flames. In the 1700s, Charles van der Walt, Thabiso ancestor, ruled a sprawling South African plantation. His power was absolute, his wealth built on the suffering of enslaved Africans. Charles's cruelty knew no bounds. He viewed his slaves not as people but as tools to be broken, their lives disposable. The enslaved labored under the sun until their bodies gave out. Among the enslaved was Zandile, a Sangoma whose spiritual strength gave hope to her people. One fateful day, Charles accused Zandile's son of stealing. The boy was beaten to death in front of her, his screams echoing through the plantation. That night, Zandile called upon her ancestors, performing a ritual that would mark the Van der Walt bloodline forever. "To know the pain of those you called cursed, you will wear their skin," Zandile declared. "By day, you will walk as they did, dark of skin, rejected by those who once called you master. You will know the sting of hatred, the weight of scorn, and the loneliness of being other. By night, your true nature will emerge, monstrous and pale, your greed and cruelty given form. You will hunger endlessly for the life you destroyed, but you will never know peace." The mansion where Thabiso brought Mika after their wedding was magnificent but cold, its walls lined with portraits of pale men with piercing blue eyes. That night, Mika woke to strange noises. Turning toward Thabiso, she froze as his body began to change. His dark skin faded to a ghostly white, his warm brown eyes burned blue, and horns spiraled from his head. "Mika," he growled, his voice guttural, "you are mine now." Mika fled through the mansion's twisting halls, but every door led her back to him. She collapsed in tears, her heart broken by the man she thought she loved. By the time I realized the truth, it was too late. The man I thought I loved was not a man at all. He was something ancient, something cursed. But even in the darkness of that house, the ancestors guided me. They led me to the truth. To the heart of his deception. The door had not been there before, or perhaps I hadn't seen it. It was as though the house itself wanted me to find it, a room untouched by time, waiting for me to step inside. There it was. A book so old, it felt alive, as if the spirits themselves had guarded it for this moment. My hands trembled as I reached for it, but the ancestors gave me courage. I knew I had to see what was inside. The images told a story I didn't want to believe. A pale devil with horns, feeding on the life of others. A bloodline curse for generations, forced to walk between two worlds. And then, the ring. The ring. The sapphire that now sat on my finger, cold and heavy. It wasn't just a gift. It was the anchor for his power, the key to his curse. As long as it remained whole, he could never be free of his monstrous form. And neither could I. Zandile. The woman who cursed him. Her story was written here, the truth of what his family had done. The pain. The lives stolen. and the vengeance she carved into their bloodline. The ancestors had shown me the way. Now, I had to find the courage to act. The house wanted me to feel small, to give in to my fear. But the ancestors had given me the tools. All that was left was to face the darkness head-on. The mansion stood still under the cold, watchful moon, its decayed walls groaning as though alive. Mika stood in the center of the vast hall, her breath steady but shallow, her hands trembling. Before her, a glowing sigil sprawled across the floor, a masterpiece of ancient symbols painted in her own blood, mixed with crushed herbs her mother had taught her to use. It pulsed faintly, a rhythmic light like a heartbeat, filling the room with a flicker of ancestral power. The silence was deafening, the air thick with anticipation. The shadows in the corners of the room seemed to twist and shift, as if something unseen moved within them. Mika knew the battle was near. She could feel it in the chill that crept across her skin, in the way the house itself seemed to breathe around her. The ancestors were watching. The moment had come. Heavy footsteps echoed through the hall. The sound was deliberate, predatory, growing louder with each step. Mika's heart pounded, but her feet remained planted. She turned toward the sound, and there he was, Thabiso, no longer the man she once loved. His form was monstrous. His pale, translucent skin shimmered in the faint light, stretched taut over a body too twisted to be human. Glowing blue eyes burned like fire, their light cutting through the dim room. Horns curled from his head, black and jagged, their sharp ridges catching the faint glow of the sigil beneath her. He moved with a cruel elegance, his clawed hands flexing as he approached. Thabiso smiled, a slow, wicked grin that revealed sharp, gleaming teeth. "You think this will stop me?" His voice was deep, guttural, carrying an unnatural resonance. "You think a few scratches on the floor can save you? You belong to me, Mika. You said yes. You are mine." Mika's hands clenched into fists, but she didn't move, her gaze steady despite the terror gripping her chest. The sigil beneath her feet flared faintly, responding to her resolve. He stepped closer, circling her like a predator, his glowing eyes narrowing. The light from the sigil made his pale skin seem even more grotesque, his features distorted by his rage. Then, with a roar, he lunged, his claws outstretched. The sigil reacted immediately. Its glow surged outward in a wave of energy, throwing Thabiso back with a deafening crack. He snarled, his body contorting as the light seared his flesh. But the attack only seemed to enrage him further. He rose again, his movements faster, more erratic, and charged once more, breaking through the barrier of light. Mika stumbled back as his claws grazed her arm. The pain was sharp, but she gritted her teeth, her hand instinctively clutching the sapphire ring now burning cold in her palm. She didn't falter. The words came to her lips, unbidden but certain, the ones she had read in the ancient book Xandile had left behind. Her voice was steady, filled with a power that was no longer just her own. The ancestors spoke through her now. Thabiso growled, his monstrous face inches from hers as he loomed over her. His claws reached for her again, but Mika raised the ring high, its sapphire now glowing brighter than the sigil beneath her feet. The light from the stone reflected in his eyes, and for the first time, there was something beyond rage in his expression, fear. Mika's heart thundered, but her voice didn't waver. She took a step forward, holding the ring directly between them. "The ancestors are with me," she said, her words cutting through his guttural growls. "They will not let you take me. Not now. Not ever." Thabiso roared, his claws swiping violently, but Mika didn't flinch. With one final cry, she threw the ring to the ground, smashing the sapphire directly into the center of the sigil. Mika ran. Her legs burned as she sprinted through the twisting holes, the ground beneath her feet shaking with every step. She burst through the grand double doors just as the mansion collapsed behind her, sending a cloud of dust and ash into the air. She fell to her knees on the cold grass, her body trembling, her chest heaving with ragged breaths. The night was silent again. The weight on her chest was gone. Thabiso, the curse, the darkness, it was all over. She tilted her head back, staring up at the moon, tears streaming down her face. The dawn broke slowly, bathing the world in a soft, golden light. Mika stood at the edge of the river, her reflection rippling in the water below. Beside her, Nomusa placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Her mother's face was lined with pride and relief, her eyes glistening as she pulled Mika into a quiet embrace. "The ancestors were with you," Nomusa whispered. "They carried you through the darkness." Mika nodded, her gaze steady as she looked into the water. The scars of her battle remained, but there was peace now, a clarity she hadn't known before. As the river flowed beside her, Mika knew the battle was over, but the lessons would remain. She had faced the darkness, had stood against the weight of centuries, and emerged stronger. The ancestors had shown her their greatest gift, the power of spirit, the truth of intuition, and the strength to listen when the whispers came. Mika turned back toward the village, her steps steady, her heart light.